There's a question hidden inside the opening pages of the Bible that I think most of us overlook. In the book of Genesis, God says something remarkable. God says humanity was made in his image, and then he gives humanity a responsibility to rule, to steward, to have dominion over the earth and every living thing in it. And that sounds powerful, but if we're honest, something about the idea feels strange when we look at our own lives, because sometimes it feels like we don't even have dominion over ourselves. We lose our temper. We say things we wish we could take back. We carry guilt from mistakes we've made. We struggle with thoughts we know aren't good for us. And those things show up in our lives. And so the idea that we're created to rule and steward the world can feel almost ironic. St. Gregory of Nyssa once reflected on this verse and asked a question that cuts straight to the heart of it. He said, "How can I rule over the beasts of the earth when there's a beast inside of me?" And he wasn't talking about animals. He was talking about the impulses that live inside the human heart, like rage and jealousy, pride and fear, the things that growl quietly beneath the surface of our lives. Gregory said something fascinating about that. He said, there are a countless number of beasts within us. Rage is one of them. He said, when rage growls in the heart, is any dog more savage? And I think most of us know exactly what he means, because we've felt that moment where something inside of us rises up. Maybe it's anger, maybe it's resentment, maybe it's bitterness, and suddenly we're not responding from wisdom or patience anymore. We're reacting almost like something else is driving the moment. There is an old story people sometimes tell that describes this struggle. It says there's two wolves living inside every person. One wolf represents anger, pride, fear, jealousy, resentment. And the other wolf represents peace, humility, love, and patience. And the question is always the same, which wolf wins? And the answer is simple, the one you feed. And that idea echoes something the Bible has been saying from the very beginning, because in Genesis, right after humanity is given dominion over the earth, something else enters the story, temptation, the serpent. And suddenly humanity faces a choice. Will we live in alignment with the good creation God made, or will we choose something else? And the story of Scripture unfolds from that moment. It becomes the story of what happens when beasts within us begin to take control. But here's something important that often gets overlooked. Genesis says something very clear about the world God created. After creating everything, God looked at his creation and said, "It is very good." Everything God made was good, which means something interesting. The problem with the world was never the material itself. The problem was the misuse of what was good. G.K. Chesterton, it's hard to say, once wrote about this idea. He said the idea that God saw everything he made and called it good contains a subtle truth. There are no bad things, only bad uses of things. The world was created good. Human beings were created good. Even the power and passion within us was created good. But good things can be twisted when our intentions move away from God. Anger itself isn't always evil, but anger that turns into rage can destroy. Desire itself isn't evil, but desire without wisdom can lead us into destructive places. Power itself isn't evil, but power without humility can damage lives. So the real struggle inside the human heart isn't about destroying what God created, it's about restoring order. It's about reclaiming dominion over the things inside us that were never meant to rule us. And the Bible speaks directly to this struggle in the book of Genesis. Just a few chapters after creation, we see the story of Cain and Abel. Cain becomes angry. God actually speaks to him in that moment. And what God says is incredibly revealing. God tells Cain, sin is crouching at your door, but you must rule over it. Notice the language, rule over it, dominion. The same language we see in the creation story, which means the struggle for dominion wasn't just about the earth, it was about the human heart. Sin crouches at the door, but it doesn't have to rule. The choice is still ours. And the New Testament continues that same theme. The Apostle Paul describes a battle that happens inside every human being. He says, I do not do the good I want to do, but the evil I do not want to do, this I keep on doing. Paul understood the beast inside the human heart, the conflict between who we want to be and what we sometimes become. But Paul also says something helpful. He says, the Spirit of God produces fruit in our lives: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. That last one is interesting. Self-control, dominion over the self. The ability to rule the impulses inside us rather than being ruled by them. And that's something that grows over time, just like the story of the wolves. What we feed grows stronger. What we starve grows weaker. If we feed anger, anger grows. If we feed resentment, resentment grows. If we rehearse guilt and shame over and over again, those things begin shaping how we see ourselves. But when we begin feeding patience, when we begin feeding humility, when we begin feeding trust in God, something different begins to grow inside us. The beasts lose their power, not instantly, but gradually. And that's important because sometimes when we talk about anger or guilt or sin, people feel overwhelmed. They feel like the battle is already lost, but Scripture doesn't speak that way. Scripture speaks in the language of cultivation, seeds, growth, transformation over time. Jesus often used the same imagery. He talked about seeds falling into soil, about vines and branches, about fruit growing slowly, which means reclaiming dominion inside our hearts isn't usually one dramatic moment. It's a process. It's the daily choice of what we feed, what we dwell on, and what we practice. And the good news is we're not meant to fight that battle alone, because the same God who gave humanity dominion in the beginning also stepped into the human story to restore it. Jesus enters the world not just to forgive sin, but to restore the image of God inside humanity, to show us what it looks like when a human life is fully aligned with God. And when you look at the life of Jesus, something remarkable stands out. Jesus had complete dominion over the beasts that destroy so many of us. When he was insulted, he didn't retaliate. When he was tempted, he resisted. When he faced suffering, he responded with trust in the Father. In other words, Jesus showed us what humanity looks like when the beasts no longer rule. And through his Spirit, that same transformation begins happening in us. Not perfectly and not instantly, but steadily, little by little, the wolves inside us don't disappear overnight, but the one we feed begins to grow stronger. And eventually, something beautiful begins to happen. The same people who once felt ruled by anger begin responding with patience. The same people who once lived under guilt begin living with grace, and the same people who once felt out of control begin walking with peace. And slowly we begin reclaiming something that was present from the very beginning: dominion, not domination over others, but wisdom over ourselves. And that might be one of the most important forms of leadership any of us can learn, because when we begin ruling the beast inside our own hearts, something changes in the way we move through the world. Our words become gentler, our reactions become calmer, and our presence becomes steadier. And the image of God that was placed inside humanity from the very beginning becomes more visible again. Not because we're perfect, but because we're learning to feed the things that bring life and starve the things that lead toward destruction. And maybe that's one of the quiet truths hidden inside the opening pages of the Bible. God didn't just create humanity to rule the earth. He created us to rule wisely, to cultivate goodness, to guard our hearts, and to choose day by day which voice inside us will shape the life we live.